for our Ask Us Anything question and answer series for expecting, new, and veteran parents. Thank you to everybody that has been joining every week and to everybody that is here tonight. I am looking forward to our guest tonight, which is Kristin Quinn of Toddlers and Tomatoes. She is Kristin is a mom to 3 young children. Hopefully I have that right. She's gonna let me know in a second. Hi, there she is. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining. 3 young children, right? I have that right.
Oh yes, hopefully we won't hear any of them in the background.
Hopefully not, but just in case, now everybody knows what the background noise would be. Yeah. So thanks for joining, Kristin. Mom to 3 young children, and you are a behavior feeding therapist. And I was just going to tell everyone that you work to empower and support families who are struggling at mealtime. Please tell us a little bit more about your background, and then we'll dive into the questions that everybody submitted while we give people time to get here.
Sure. So my start in the feeding world was at Children's Hospital as a behavior therapist. I absolutely loved it, and it was such an interesting experience for me because not only could I see the impact I was having on the children, but on the family as a whole. And the piece that I really enjoyed at the hospital was in helping to empower the parents to bring things into their home and make their lives better. So fast forward a few years from working there, I decided with my husband that I really wanted to be home for our children, but I loved the work so much that I didn't want to abandon it completely. So I took the piece of working at the hospital I loved the most, which was supporting the families, and that's what I do now. I try to help people identify what's stressing them out about their child's eating and make changes so that they're not feeling so stressed out, connect to resources, which sometimes includes me and sometimes is they need a broader range of professionals to help them feel better about their child's eating. So I help them connect to those resources and make a plan to feel better about meal times with their kids.
I love this. That's excellent. And I know that you already know this, but I want our audience to know it too, is that if a family's struggling with stressful mealtime behavior, they're certainly not alone. Obviously, I help families with the sleep, but I would say like second to sleep problems are picky eating or whatever we want to call it, mealtime problems. So we definitely want families to know that it's a really common struggle. What I love about what you do is you either, sometimes you're just like helping parents set expectations, like, hey, that's not actually a problem. Maybe you just need to chill out about it. Or identifying things that, could be made easier. And I know we're often sending families back and forth, which is awesome too, to have you as a resource. So I'm glad that you ended up doing what you ended up doing, and I'm glad you're here tonight to share your knowledge with us. Okay, are you ready to get into our questions?
Sure.
All right, awesome. And if anybody, for anybody that hops on, you can post your questions in the comments. I'll keep an eye on those as well if you didn't get to submit one in advance. But our first one is, my 2-year-old will only eat a few types of food, think dinosaur nuggets. I don't know whether to force the issue, keep exposing and relax about it, or something else help. So this one comes up really, really often. The kids will only eat like 3 food groups. I'm sure you're going to say that age probably factors in, but I'll let you take it from there. What do we do with kids that will only eat a few things?
So one of the things is, this is so common because kids really like familiar things that are familiar. They find that one thing that they know, they recognize, it's easy to chew and swallow. They've had it a million times, and why chance it with something else? So they know what they like, and most of the time that's fine, but it's really stressful for parents who are tasked with providing their children with a variety of healthy foods. My mom answer is, don't worry, is he growing? Is he healthy? Is he running around? Is the doctor unconcerned and unbothered? Then they're probably fine. as long as you keep offering those other things, eventually they will find some other things besides the dinosaur nuggets that they will enjoy. If you're really noticing that it's truly only the chicken nuggets and nothing else, then there are ways to improve that, and it looks a little bit different for each kid, and it depends on the family and your parenting style and your child's temperament. But the biggest thing for kids is repeated exposure. My first caveat is always try not to stress out about it. Try to just do what you know in your gut to be the right thing, and present them with a variety of food, and trust that eventually those new things won't be so scary as the more that they see them, and the more that they see you eating them, or an older sibling, or when they start going into school and seeing other kids eating things. Usually, I hate to say, the typical picky eater, and they'll grow out of it. A lot of times it's true. Sometimes it's not. And so if you feel like it's something that they're not going to grow out of and it's a real issue, then that's when you start asking questions. You start with the pediatrician. And that's how a lot of my families find me, is because people keep telling them it's not a problem, but your mom or dad gut is telling you that it is a problem.
Which I always tell families to listen to. The worst that happens is you get to an expert that says, like, glad you reached out, but nothing's wrong. The best that happens is something is going on and everyone's life can be made easier.
Absolutely. So just keep offering it, keep trying, and if you really feel like there's an issue, keep asking questions until you land on someone who can help you.
Okay, awesome. And this might put you on the spot, but for the typical picky eater who is going to grow out of it, do you feel like there's an age where you'll see them start to come out of it, or does it just vary too much to really say?
So I think as they get into the older preschool years, you can start talking to them about what helps their body feel good and what helps their body grow, and start showing them cute little videos and giving them the information and bringing them into the kitchen and having them help you choose things in the grocery store. And eventually, at some point, something that worked for my own children is when they had trouble going to the bathroom, and I was able to explain to them that certain foods would help them go to the bathroom. And I think at some point they get to an age 4, 5, 6, 7 where you can reason with them a little bit more. And if it is just the typical picky eating, they'll take in that information and adjust as they grow.
Got it. Okay, excellent. All right, the next question is, my kiddo subsists on lots of milk and frequent snacks like goldfish. I can't get him to sit for a full meal, and when I do get him to sit, he barely picks at the food. It's so frustrating. How do I get him to eat rather than graze? There's a lot in there.
So milk and snacks fill bellies. And what I tell parents is there are some things that you can control and some things that you can't control. And some of the things that you can control are what's available to your child, what comes into the house, what they have access to, when they have access to it, and how you manage their complaints. So as far as filling up on milk and snacks, I think 2 things. Number one, you can create sort of a schedule, not a strict, you have to have milk at 10 o'clock a.m. and no other time, but sort of an awareness of what they're having throughout the day and spacing it out so that they're not super full when they sit down for a meal. Some kids are filling up so much on milk that they're just simply not going to be hungry at meal times. And so for those kiddos, it might take a deeper look at how much they're consuming and how much you need to cut back on that. But for most kids, it's just a matter of timing and access. And the same with the snacks. Now, snacks, I say that I'm not against snacks, but consider what is available as a snack, and consider it part of, it could be a mini meal. So there's nothing wrong with goldfish, especially if you're on the go and it's easy and they like it and you want to give it to them, that's totally fine. If you can identify some snack foods that offer a little bit more nutrition, then you can consider that as part of their meal time, their food consumption for the day.
Especially for the grazers, right? Who that's their style. So that might help this.
Yeah. So
to think of the grazing as actual mini meals versus snacking meals.
There's nothing wrong with snacking or grazing, and I think a lot of adults prefer to eat that way. A lot of several mini meals throughout the day. Just consider their day. When are they eating? What are they eating? And are they really going to be hungry to eat anything when you want them to have lunch or dinner? And adjust accordingly. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think the only piece of that we didn't touch on may be related to not being hungry enough. But what about the kiddo who just will not sit for a meal?
Sometimes that's the first thing that we have to work on. And depending on the age of the kid, sometimes I'll suggest a timer. And if they're not going to sit at the table, then they're not going to eat. So even though it feels tedious and almost like a step that you want to skip, sometimes you have to work on coming to the table and sitting at the table. Even if you start at 30 seconds, depending on the age of the kid and their ability to focus. But for some kids, it really is, please come to sit at the table for 30 seconds. And 30 seconds is an accomplishment. And then you build on that. And it's the same thing with food as well. Even though it feels like such a long, tedious road, those baby steps are so important.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like a long, tedious road to our adult brains, right? But we have to almost put ourselves back in the toddler mentality. A minute might seem like a lifetime. All right. I think we hit on everything in that question. Our next one is, dinner is always stressful. We need to pick up from daycare, cook the meal, get it on the table. Then our toddler takes forever to eat very little, delaying the whole evening and especially bedtime. How can I get her to eat faster? So I wonder if this is tied to the last one, but I'll let you take it.
Very good question. So first of all, my advice is to pick a few things that are quick and easy for the weekday meals, because my biggest goal is to decrease stress. And so even though you would love your toddler to come to the table and eat this gourmet meal with you, or whatever meal that you would like for yourself, that's not always realistic. So have some things that are ready to go, that are easy, filling, nutritious. Here you go, easy peasy. I always recommend keeping meals under 20 minutes max, especially for the younger toddlers. So I would recommend not expecting them to finish a whole plate of food cut it at 20 minutes regardless of what they've eaten. But that might mean that you need to scale back your expectation of how much they're eating. And that is a big thing that I see is, as adults, we're expecting our children to eat a lot more than really they need, and really they're capable of doing in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah. I know you don't have pictures or anything, photos right now, but what are we talking for? What if we're setting our expectations? What are reasonable portion sizes for, the toddler age, that it's not a full dinner size plate of food?
So there are the recommended daily intakes. There's the amount you as the parent want them to eat, and then there's the amount that they're realistically going to eat. So when I say this, some people may be like, what's the point? But you want to take a spoon of broccoli and put it on your plate as an adult and eat it. As a child, maybe one stalk of broccoli is reasonable, or maybe a half a stalk of broccoli is reasonable. And the way that you figure that out is by what are you putting on their plate now, and how much are they eating? If they're only eating one bite of that scoop of broccoli, then you need to start at one bite, like one piece, whatever it is that they're showing you they're capable of doing. You need to scale back your expectations and then build up based on what they show you that they're capable of doing.
And I think the kids get visually overwhelmed by the big portions. Is that what you find?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, why bother? I'm never going to eat all this.
Exactly. So, and they just tend to shut down. They see all this stuff in front of them that it's way too much, and they're just like, nope, I'm not. This is too much. I'm not gonna do any of it.
Got it. Okay, good. I know I'll often tell families, I mean, I think there's a lot of value in a family meal, and I get like everyone coming together. I'm sure you can speak to that. But if I find a family that's stressed about sleep timing and the end of the day, and I'm like, just give your kiddo a meal that's, like you said, quick and easy, foods you know they will eat. You can sit with them to have it, but do your big, long, quiet dinner later if you have to. Like, none of this is going to last forever, right?
Sure.
So we have to sometimes prioritize what's the most stressful thing.
Yeah, so a couple of different things. So if you're picking up a child from daycare, they may have recently had a snack and they might not be hungry right away when you come home. Yeah. Alternatively, you might have kids who are ready for dinner at 4 or 4:30, which is not when you want to eat. So I agree with you, Erica, to just kind of give them their meal. I do recommend being present with them.
Sure.
Sitting with them if you're able to, or at least talking to them, acknowledging them, checking in with them, because I think that piece of the family meal is so important. And like you said, that routine won't be forever, and eventually they will be at the table with you having dinner. But if it's your life easier and they're ready at 4:35 and you're not, give them their meal, and then you can have a pleasant meal later on.
I love the adult dinner. Actually, you actually taste the food.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that early 4:30, 5 o'clock hour. So when we're working on sleep, I find that kids have sort of a bedtime window of time where they're tired enough to fall asleep, but not so overtired that sleep is going to be harder than it needs to be. And I will often tell families that there's a similar dinner window. Am I making that up, or do you feel like that's true? Kids get too tired or too hungry, to focus on eating?
Yeah, I do think that that's true. And I do think, so I personally, as a mom, have been very big on the family mealtime, and I've gone back and forth with trying to feed the kids earlier and trying to have everybody at the table together. And my kids are a little bit older now, so it's easier. So I can attest to the fact that they move into the family dinner time. But there's definitely a window, and you will know the window by how they're behaving and if they're asking for snacks. And, a lot of times if they're asking for a snack at 4:35, that window, you can give them dinner. Give them their dinner, and everybody will be happier.
I think that's awesome for parents to have permission. Like, you can just give them dinner. and it can solve a lot of what we've been talking about.
And I think that the guilt part is missing out on the family dinner, but there's so many other ways to connect and to have that family dinner experience, but you can have your pleasant meal later on in the evening.
Plus, if the family dinner experience is suffering anyway, and it's a major source of stress, then what are we trying really to hold on to, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's awesome for parents to know it's okay, and it might just be for now.
I will say one thing is, like, I don't want to be making dinner for 4 hours, for everybody. So that goes back to just identifying a couple of easy things that your kids are going to eat. They're going to be fine. And then everybody will be happier, and you're not in the kitchen just making meals constantly throughout the evening.
Yes, no, that was not necessarily what I was suggesting, but I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're moving on from that one. All right, all my toddler wants to do with food is play with it and play in it. Mm-hmm. How can I stop that behavior? So we already know we want to make sure this kiddo is hungry enough, right?
Right.
Let's assume that they are.
So a lot of people, this is a common thing that comes up for a lot of families, because eating is messy and learning how to eat is messy. And it's totally developmentally appropriate for the young toddler to be playing in their food and feeling, there's so many different textures, and this is how they're experiencing the food and deciding if they want to put it into their mouth or not. And noticing the differences in temperature, and like this stuff's slimy and this stuff's hard and this stuff's crunchy. Totally normal, but can be a stress for parents because it's all over the place and it's on the floor. And so my advice is let them do it. Be prepared for it. If you really don't want them to be messy because you don't want them to mess up their outfit, throw a t-shirt, like an old t-shirt, over them. I don't really love bibs because they don't work that great. They soak through or they pull them off and they're a distraction, but just kind of put something over them that you can take off and it's not a big deal. You can also put things under the high chair for easy cleanup. But I think it does help a lot of families to know that it's normal and it's part of the experience, and they're not trying to be bad or misbehave. They're just learning what to do with all of these new things. But one way that you can manage it is to limit what you're putting in front of them, like how much you put in front of them. You can
make a mess of what they have in front of them.
Yeah. What is your tolerance level? Only put that much in front of them.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. And this was not included in that question, but what would you say to the mom whose kiddo just throws everything over the side? Throw it over the side, throw the plate, throw the utensil, throw the food itself. Do we ignore that? Do we say no? Do we stop putting food on the tray?
So, excuse me. Ignore. And it's so hard to do. And you have to remind yourself they're not doing it to be bad. It's also developmentally appropriate. And the way to sort of manage it is if it works without a utensil or a plate or a bowl, just put it in front of them. It's great practice with finger foods. They don't need to eat it off of a fork or a spoon. Even the things like yogurt, if they like to play in it and you want to put it on their tray, they can use their fingers. And not forever, but in the beginning while they're learning, that minimizes the things they have to throw. But I think also the more you ignore those things, the more you will experience that it diminishes, and then it will be easier to ignore. So I think it's really hard at first if it's your first baby, or if it's something that really irritates you, it's hard to ignore it. But the more you ignore it, the less it will happen, and you'll move along to the next thing.
Excellent. Got it. Okay. So now we have the opposite question. I can't even get my toddler to touch food, let alone eat it. What do I do? So we have two opposite ends of the spectrum.
So again, also very common. A lot of babies and young toddlers don't like to touch unfamiliar things. And it's usually just a typical developmental phase where they're a little bit hesitant and they need a little bit more time to get comfortable with the different textures and feels of things. So the biggest thing you can do is help them practice with feeling different things. And there's a lot of great books like with different tactile things to play around with. There's sensory bins that you can make to get them feeling different textures and getting used to that kind of stuff, and just practice. And notice how they interact with everything, not just food. So this goes back to an earlier question. If you use your parent instinct, and if you notice that they're having difficulty in all sensory situations, they don't like loud noises, they don't like the grass ever, they don't like sand, they don't like water, then that's maybe maybe you'd want to check in with an occupational therapist who really addresses those kinds of things. But again, it's most likely just a typical developmental phase, and they just need a little more time to get used to the different new experiences.
Got it. Okay. This is a big one. If my child doesn't eat what I make, should I offer them something else? I don't want to perpetuate the habit, but I'm really worried about him wanting a snack when it's bedtime or going to bed hungry and then not sleeping well. So this is one of those guilt dilemmas for parents. We know that we should say, like, eat what I give you.
Yeah.
And we don't want to whatever's going to happen on the other side.
So the way that I get around this is put several things on the out as an option, and have one or two of those things be familiar things, and one or two be new or maybe not loved things. So you're making spaghetti and meatballs, and your child doesn't love the meatballs. Have the spaghetti and maybe a bite of meatball, so that they're filling up on the things that they like, but they're still exposed to the newer things. I would hesitate to immediately make something else, something different. It's better to offer something familiar from the start, as this is what this is what's available for this meal. So keep in mind think about something that will help them feel full, but also something that will expand their diet a little bit.
Got it. And this is my own question, where do you stand on you just have to you have to give it one taste? Is that
I'm a big
a lot of us do it. Are we supposed to do it?
So this is a very controversial subject. I think that it's an excellent way to provide the option for children to taste things that they otherwise would not choose to taste. I do think it's not for every family or every situation. I wouldn't recommend doing it in the middle of a family party or at a restaurant or with maybe in-laws that have a strong opinion about what's happening. But I do think that it's appropriate to have some structure, routine, and expectation at meal times, so that it shouldn't be a punitive thing or a punishment or a super stressful thing. It should just be something that your child expects from you, that, okay, I'm going to have to try this new thing that mom made. I have found it to be a very successful way to expand kids' diets.
Parents probably just want to use it cautiously.
So
we're asking them to literally taste it, not eat the entire meatball, for example.
You want to be reasonable with what you're expecting of your child. So if you can look at a meatball, I would not expect them to eat a whole meatball, just a little bite.
Got it. All right, excellent. Another maybe controversial topic: is it bad to withhold dessert if my child does not eat dinner?
So yes, this is another controversial topic. I think that it is okay to have a carrot at the end of the stick. I think it's okay to have a motivation for your child to do something that maybe they're not super excited about doing. I think that if you're having this super special dessert, like a birthday cake or something, your kid really enjoys, I wouldn't withhold that necessarily, or I wouldn't make the demand in the first place on those types of situations. But if there's,
because you probably won't be able to follow through, right?
And if you did, then it would be very stressful,
right.
Not pretty for anybody. But I do think it's okay if they know that there's a thing of chocolate ice cream in the freezer and they're willing, and that it's motivating enough for them that they would try something. I think it's okay to say, you can have a bowl of ice cream if you try this bite of meatball. I think that I know that there are professionals who disagree with me, but I do not think that is, I think that's a reasonable, I think if you're comfortable with what you're asking your child to do, it is reasonable to provide them with a reward. And my personal feeling is that it's okay to teach kids that no food is super bad, but some food provides more nutrition and is more important to include in your diet, and some food is for fun. That's my opinion.
Okay, good. I think this is our last one, although maybe I'll throw some of mine in at the end. When our family goes to a restaurant or to a party, my child won't eat anything. What do I do about that?
So again, my big thing is, how are you going to eliminate your stress or diminish your stress? My suggestion is usually to either feed your child ahead of time or pack something that that they're going to eat. Not because I feel like you should accommodate them forevermore, but I think you and your child will have a much more enjoyable time if you're not stressed out about what they're going to eat.
You're not having like a hunger crash, right? A blood sugar crash.
Yeah. And, I think if you feed them ahead of time, then that's actually improving the situation for yourself, because then you're not worried about, oh my gosh, what are they going to eat? And now that's not ideal in the long run, but I think it's okay to make those accommodations to decrease stress in certain situations.
Sure. I mean, you could be working on it at home and then just say, this is one of those times where we're not going to be working on that goal.
You don't have to do the one taste bite in the middle of a party or a restaurant.
Right. At Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Good. Well, that was all super helpful, and I think that's everything we got in advance. If you could just speak to, so a lot of what we have said is like, we can calm down, we can let it go, we can pick our battles, but what are red flags that families are looking for to know that maybe chilling out about it is not the way that they need to go?
So if you think about it, many families will bring this up with their pediatrician, and their pediatrician will say, are they growing? Are they gaining weight? Are they growing in height? Are they moving around and not feeling sick or appearing sick? Then they're probably okay. Are they following their growth curve? Are they generally healthy and they're just a typical picky eater? Then they're probably healthy, but that doesn't mean that you are not stressed out about it. So that is what my role is, to help families who are stressed, even though maybe there's not a huge issue, even though maybe there's not a huge medical issue, the family is still feeling stressed, and that's an issue that needs help. Big red flags are if you notice chewing and swallowing concerns, where they're holding food in their mouth and not swallowing. There might be something going on that you're not aware of. So that's something that you would want to bring up. I said earlier, if they really are limited to only one or two foods and just really will not expand past those foods, that's kind of a red flag. If they're having trouble transitioning from pureed food to chopped table food, that's something that you'd want to bring up. And I keep saying this, but your parent gut will usually tell you, as long as you stay off of parenting boards and don't
ask anywhere, right?
Where you'll get like a million different responses. Usually you'll know if it's a real concern. But your feelings and your concerns are valid and important as well.
Sure. Excellent. I love that. All right. So lastly, tell us, what does it look like to work with you? Let's say a family is like, yep, I heard everything you said and I'm still stressed out. How does it go?
So a family usually lands at me when they've been to the doctor or they don't know that there's any help, and they just sort of happened upon my service. And my service is a little bit unique because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not an OT, I'm not a speech, but I'm familiar with all of that. So what I do is I spend the first session with a family, and I really learn about them, learn about their child, learn about their child's, if there's any significant medical or developmental history, if they've ever worked with anyone before for feeding, and then, learn about their daily routines. I'm sure that the more that you talk to families, the more information you get, and the easier it is to help them figure out what might be the issues and concerns. So we spend that initial time sort of fleshing out a plan together, identifying what their stressors are and what it would look like for them when things were better. Like what would happen to make them feel better about their child's eating. And then I either refer them out to appropriate resources or continue to support them for, I have a variety of package lengths, and during that time I'm available to the family for Zoom calls, emails, phone calls, check-ins, just to stay on track with the plan that we established together.
Awesome. Well, that sounds lovely. And lastly, tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on Facebook at Toddlers and Tomatoes, on Instagram at Mealtime Helper, and you can email me at toddlersandtomatoes@gmail.com, and my website, which is toddlersandtomatoes.com.
Got it. A big long list.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I do not see any questions additionally in the comments, so I think we hit everything that everyone wanted to hear about. I super appreciate your time and your knowledge, and I'm sure our audience will too. And thank you for taking the time to hang out with us.
Great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks so much. Thanks everybody that joined. We'll be back next week, Monday at 8 p.m. with Joe Metzger of Safer Babies. He's been 20 years in the childproofing business and will answer all your questions about making your home safe for babies. So we'll see you all back then. Have a great rest of your night. Bye.